Hello, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed your first look at Civilization 6 Gathering Storm, coming February 14th, 2019. So we like you guys so much, we wanted to make sure we went a little above and beyond, you know, chocolates and flowers and all that. So I am Sarah Darney, Marketing Manager at Firaxis Games, and I'm really excited because we want to show you guys a little bit more of the game today. We've got Ed Beach here, franchise lead designer for Civilization 6, and Dennis Shirk, the lead producer. So we're going to talk a little bit about the game first, and then we're actually going to show you guys some first look gameplay. So thank you guys for coming.
Hey, it's a big day. Anytime we can get to the second expansion on a Civilization title, our fan community knows that, you know, that's when the game is chock full of brand new features and, you know, full to the brim with everything you expect throughout the entire game. And that's the point we're at right now. So we get to start sharing that. It's kind of going to be tricky for us to go through how much has been added in this expansion in the amount of time we have today. So we're going to have to string that out over the next, you know, weeks and months to come, but it's great to get that started.
And this is literally overflowing with new stuff. Even going through some of our press interviews over the past few days, we're always talking about something which automatically leads us into something else, and something else we forgot to talk about. It just goes on and on. So there's going to be a lot of information upcoming, and it's super exciting.
All right, so we started with the trailer, the opening cinematic for the game, which I always feel like kind of captures the theme, the mood of the game. So how do you guys feel like that did that? Like, is it capturing all of what's to come?
It absolutely did. And what we did when we first started work on Gathering Storm is we had the idea that the central theme was going to be, let's make the world around you even more part of the game than it ever had been before. In Civilization 6, we've always felt like, you know, how you related to the map and how you laid your civilization out on the map was a key part of the gameplay and was going to really drive what you were doing. But we felt like the map wasn't changing, wasn't dynamic, didn't interact with the player enough. And we really wanted to do some things so that all of a sudden you couldn't be sure exactly where everything, you know, was landing on the map. Maybe a volcano would erupt, or maybe that river valley that you settled in, that river would actually flood. And so those were kind of the initial things we started working on, and the team really embraced that, and we just started adding more and more features in that direction. So we started thinking, well, we should have some, you know, semblance of climate change in here, and so maybe the global temperature is going to rise, and the sea levels will rise, and the polar ice caps will melt. And so we just started down that path, and all of a sudden we had 4 different types of storms in the game, we had droughts in the game, and so the intro video sort of showing that relationship between man and the planet, where sometimes the planet's getting ahead of man, and sometimes man is doing a great job of harnessing, you know, the opportunities that they can get from the planet. That's exactly what the theme of the expansion is, and I think the movie did a great job.
And that path was seemingly endless sometimes, because once Ed started going down the path of adding storms, it just spiderwebbed from there, especially by the time he got to climate change, and then the flood barriers had to be added. Things were added all over the place to just make this just big and huge, much to the chagrin of production and the art team. When, you know, it's just, we're an iterative gameplay company. And so naturally, when designers have ideas, we're going to try them out.
Yeah, I mean, because why have one form of renewable energy when you can actually have 5 different sources of renewable energy?
All right. So we're getting all over the place. There's so much to talk about. We've got our environmental effects, #OneMoreCloud. We have our power and the renewable energy. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Okay, so strategic resources have been entirely revamped for Gathering Storm.
Nice.
And so early on with Civ 6, it was just, do you have access to the resource? Now we're doing a lot more accounting. We have to, because we have to keep track of, are you burning coal in your power plants? Are you burning oil? How much of the coal and oil do you have in your stockpile? So we've actually spread that out throughout the strategic resource system. And now all the units in the game are built with exact amounts of strategic resources. Some of the ones later in the game, you're going to have to incur a turn-by-turn maintenance to keep them powered, you know, with your tanks needing fuel to get across the steppes of whatever country you're invading. So, you know, that's kind of a whole new element that's been added in terms of how strategic resources are handled, but it really feeds into, you know, that theme of how your powering your cities, how they're getting bonuses from being powered, and how that goes along with driving things like climate change in the game.
All right. You
No,
look
I
like
was just
you
going
want
to
say
say
something.
it's a great balance. This is another one of those hooks that kind of merged into play, which is that balance between having these resources to fuel your units and needing the resources to fuel your cities. Whether you go with cheaper resources like coal and oil, knowing that you're probably going to be endangering the rest of the planet with coastal flooding, et cetera, versus going to cleaner energy. It's a great synergy between all the systems.
So you really can kind of predict what's going to happen with the world around you. It's not just like disasters happen, world floods for no reason.
That's a key thing, and there's a big culture in Firaxis that we've been making civilization games for a long time, and we have to make sure we learn the lessons from previous games. And so, yeah, I was told pretty carefully that going into a random events natural disaster system, was not without some peril. So we thought about that long and hard, and we sort of feel like we have a controlled randomization system for the way the random events are working. So there are things like we have an expected number of times that we expect a volcano to erupt during the game, or expected number of times that we are anticipating that a river is going to flood. And the random events are not purely random. They sort of steer you towards those outcomes. So if a river has never flooded at all in the game, the chance of it flooding is going to build so that it becomes one of the likely events on the next turn. And we also do things like, if the planet is not warming up, then a lot of those events are going to keep at a low level of likelihood. So we're not going to have an increased chance of flooding or hurricanes or whatever until you get to the point where you've burned enough fossil fuels, your planet's warming up, all of a sudden things are starting to go out of control a little bit. But that's something that the players in the game have done to themselves. So there's definitely control over that. And we'll also see right away, as soon as we dive into gameplay, which we're going to do real soon here, that there are all sorts of indicators for the players about the dangers of the spots that they're settling. So you can tell if you're in a floodplain, you can tell if you're near a volcano, you can tell if there are risks of coastal flooding late in the game where you're settling. So you've got the information ahead of time. Some areas are safe, but maybe they're not as ideal in terms of the yields you'll get from them. And so you have to trade off those risk and reward and make the call for yourself when you set up your empire.
So we did touch on this, I think, a little bit. At least the video did for sure. World Congress is coming back. Yes?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
World Congress is just a fantastic new system. We're excited about this. We wanted to revisit how World Congress functioned in Civilization 5 and come up with something new that fans will really be able to sink their teeth into. We actually have two different modes of World Congress in the game. One is bringing forward the emergency system that we had in the first expansion and merging it with the World Congress. So if you have something happen to you in the game now, whether it's one of the more traditional emergencies, like your holy city is converted, you get a city taken, a city-state gets annexed, or perhaps you have a situation happen where a flood comes ripping through your territory, causing massive damage, casualties, etc. You're going to have an option to call a special session of the World Congress and have people vote on enacting one of these emergencies. So whether it's a request for aid for yourself, whether it's, he converted my city, it's going to be put before the council. And then the next turn, the World Congress will come up, everybody will vote, and you get to see if that's enacted. Aside from that, we've got a normal session of Congress now, but just a regular World Congress. It happens every 30 turns or so if you're playing at like standard speed. And this just comes up with topical resolutions by the era. And they're not just typical resolutions. So if I'm playing an ancient era game, one of the resolutions that might come up is either, it's a luxury resource resolution, for example. And you might either get a chance to say, I want to ban this resource, or I want to promote and double the yields of this resource. And you actually get to choose a target for that as well. So bananas specifically, because I'm a banana heavy civ. So you actually get to get really down into that granularity when you're taking control of a resolution in the World Congress. The difference with all of this, everybody gets one vote for free, but there is a new resource you're using in the game. It's not really a resource, just how I like to refer to it. It's called diplomatic favor. You're earning diplomatic favor by doing things that are great for interactions with the world. So if I have alliances, I'm earning diplomatic favor. If I've got suzerains, I'm earning diplomatic favor. If I'm making a promise to somebody else and I keep it, I'm earning diplomatic favor. And this is an abstract currency that enables me to pump up my vote in the World Congress. So I can turn my 1 vote into 5 or 6. So as a diplomatic player, if I'm really wanting to control the outcomes of the World Congress, I'm really going to hone in on diplomatic favor to make sure I control that. And of course, all of this eventually leads into a diplomatic victory that is new to this game too.
New victory type.
At a certain point later in the game, those are going to start being inserted into World Congress. The ability to vote yourself diplomatic victory points. And that's where having that extra favor really comes into play, because it's not just voting for points. I'm either voting for giving somebody points or taking points away from somebody, and then I choose the target. So controlling that with all this extra favor is a very big deal. And of course, naturally, this wouldn't be World Congress if we didn't add things like I don't want to get into specifics, but like the World's Fair, World Games, climate accords, things like that.
One of the new big ones like that is the disaster relief. So
Yeah.
if somebody does get hit with a disaster, you can actually earn diplomatic victory points just from being the person who really has helped bail them out of that situation, or you'll at least be able to get a nice large chunk of diplomatic favor out of it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it sounds like we're really kind of like moving towards a future world. You know, we've got this climate change, these rising sea levels, which, you know, is something that a lot of people are concerned about, but it's not necessarily happening completely right now. So tell me more about, you know, what we might see in this future.
Sure, that was one of the first things that we realized when we were really engaging with this whole idea of climate change, is that this hasn't really played out in human history yet. It's something that's going to play out over the next 50 or 100 years. So it really makes sense to extend the timeline of the game further into the future from where we are right now. So we're like, well, that means we actually really need another era in the tech and civic trees. And so in this future era, you know, what's that going to be? How's that going to work? So that's going to be one of the things that we talk about more, you know, several weeks down the line. We'll give all the full details there.
Well, we should tease a little bit, 'cause it's really cool.
Yeah, so there are great things there in terms of how pretty much all the victories have had a significant look at them. So the domination victory, the science victory, and the culture victory, we said, what would be really cool to add in this sort of near future, you know, era that might extend out to maybe 2050 or so. And so there are tools there that are going to help you curb climate change. There are also tools there that are going to give you that final push towards any of those 3 victory types.
Nice.